Iron and steel. They've been the backbone of modern industry since the Industrial Revolution. For more than 150 years, railroads and freighters have connected the transportation and production of these substantial metals. Just 3 miles north of downtown Youngstown, Ohio, are 4 unique narrow-gauge steam locomotives that once operated at a steel mill in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. These small but odd-shaped engines have earned them the nickname Rolling Ingots. So let's take a visit to the Youngstown Steel Heritage Foundation and learn more about these beefy tea kettles. The Jones Laughlin Steel Corporation was one of the largest iron and steel manufacturers in the United States during the 19th and 20th centuries. The organization traces its roots back to 1853, when Benjamin F. Jones joined a partnership with Samuel Keir and brothers Bernard and John Loth to form Jones, Loth and Company. When James Laughlin bought into the firm, it became Jones and Laughlin's. The company's facilities were located in Birmingham, Pennsylvania, on the south side of what is now Pittsburgh. Originally, the firm strictly dealt in puddling pig iron to produce wrought iron, iron bars, and plates. By 1894, however, JNL had exited the production of iron in favor of their increasing steel business.
Jones Laughlin Steel Pittsburgh Works, which was on the Monongahela River just up from the point, had a 23-inch gauge rail operation ever since they started the plant in the 1850s. And over the years, as the plant grew and they did more steel production there, it kind of got hemmed into the point where they couldn't put anything larger than the 23-inch gauge railroad that they had. So their only choice was to buy larger and heavier locomotives. So over the years, they would buy locomotives from either Pittsburgh Locomotive Works or H.K. Porter, and getting heavier and heavier. And in the mid-1920s, they had several made that weighed 60,000 pounds. But by the mid-30s, those were no longer big enough, and then they bought 7 of these that weighed in about 93,000. The 58 and the 57 were the first ones built. They were built in 1937. Then a couple years later, another one was built, and the last 2 were built in 1947. And so they had a total of 7 locomotives over the years. So mainly what they were used for in the old part of the steelmaking plant was moving ingot molds and ingots from the open hearth to the soaking pits, and also providing just general rail transportation in among that original part of the plant, which included the number 1 and number 2 open hearths. There was a blooming mill there, a couple rolling mills. They had something they called a polishing mill, machine shops, and other warehouses. And so this narrow gauge operation ran through and among all these buildings. And it was quite extensive and very tight curves and limited clearances in there. The narrow gauge operation at the Pittsburgh Works stopped sometime in the mid to late 1950s. So out of the 7 locomotives, 6 of them were sitting on a deadline at the plant. And a fellow by the name of Ken Williams, who started Crown Metal Products, he hired a fellow who was an engineer for H.K. Porter to help him design his 440 locomotives. And this engineer from Porter, you know, you could drive down not Second Avenue, but Route 837, and you could see these locomotives in the plant. And apparently one day he remarked that, you know, it's like, I was kind of proud of that design, so we worked on that, and, you know, I was really proud of those locomotives that we built. Which gave Ken an idea. He thought, well, maybe we could get the steel mill to sell me one of them. We'll fix it up there and put it out at the farm. So he went to JNL and asked them if they would sell him one of the locomotives, and they said, no, we won't sell it to you, but we'll give you all 6 of them if you get them off the property. So they took all 6 of them, built a little piece of track out at the farm in Elizabeth, and trucked them all out there. The 7th locomotive, we don't know what happened to it. It never left the plant, so it either got scrapped some other place or destroyed or something. Of the 6, there was one that a local farmer wanted, and I think he just wanted the chassis. And so they took the boiler off and all that, and it saved a chassis for him, but then he backed out of it. So they ended up scrapping the rest of it. Another one, the 62, went to Colorado. It was purchased by a private owner in Colorado and trucked out there. Then another fellow up in Canada wanted to buy a couple of them, so he bought 2 of them, and he also the 30-inch gauge Porter tank engine that came out of Latrobe Steel. So he took those up to Canada. The 59 and the 58 were the 2 that were left behind. They ended up at a rigger's yard over in Cranberry, PA, and that's where I first saw them. And if you drive down the Pennsylvania Turnpike, you could see them off to the side. And this was in the mid-90s, and I'm just out of high school and had no money, but I wanted to save one. And I remember that 58 was the locomotive that was featured in the 1941 Locomotive Cyclopedia. So I thought, that would be the one that I'd like to get. Well, when we went there and looked at them, 58 was in fairly decent shape. 59, however, had a large crack running through the right side cylinder casting. And John Bencart, who owned them at the time, said, well, nobody's going to want to buy it like that, so I'm just going to cut it up, because his property is pretty small, so he needed the space. So we made a deal with him, and a friend of mine, the name of Dave Rupert, said, well, if you're going to scrap it, I'd like to buy the boiler. So he bought the boiler, took it up to Masery to his house. They had no use for it, he just didn't want to see it get cut up. Since at the time I was planning on buying 58, I said, well, I'll buy all the side rods and all the various bits and pieces off of it. And so I got all that stuff and put it in storage. And the only thing you really cut up was the saddle tank and the frame and the cab of the 59. Well, I never did buy 58. Time goes on, it gets sold to a fellow over by Weirton. It was there for a while. Then Jonas Stutzman up in Middlefield bought it. It went up to Middlefield to his boiler shop. And then that's where I found it up there, bought it, and brought it down here. Now, of course, we have that locomotive, and I didn't know about the existence of the rest of them. So we get it down here and start working on it. Then I get an email from a fellow that's like, hey, my brother was the guy who owned it before Jonas. He's passed away, but the saddle tank is in his yard over his house, and we're getting ready to sell the house to settle the estate. So I went over there and found the saddle tank back in the woods with the trees growing around it. And so got it, and there was also 2 extra sets of drivers there from the 59. We got it, got those. And then I found out about the 2 locomotives in Canada. And so I find a couple of years goes by, the family up there is like, hey, we want to sell the farm, we want to get these off the property. If you want them, we want 10 grand Canadian a piece, which is like $7,900 American. So this was in the middle of COVID, and traveling to Canada wasn't the easiest thing to do. So I found someone up in Canada who would handle getting them shipped. And all I had to do was pay the bills, and he would handle everything up there. So you got the cranes on site, got the truck, got everything loaded up. They went over to a truck wash so they could pressure wash them, and for $600 a piece, just blew like 5 tons of dirt and rocks and vegetation, all that off of them before they came over the border. Then we brought them down here and unloaded them. Then the following year, I find out about the one that's out in Colorado, and so we make a deal to go out and get it. And so last August, we went out there, bought it, and then trucked it back. And then even before the ones in Canada, that boiler that Dave had saved, he sold it to the Niles Canyon Railroad out in California, and it went to California because they had a standard gauge porter that they thought that they could retrofit that boiler to, but they never did. So it sat out there in their yard. so bought it back and brought it back. So all the existing parts of the 6 locomotives that are still around, we have here now after a, 2-country, full across the continent, basically scavenger hunt looking for all these parts.
That scavenger hunt resulted in JNL 58 returning to steam in 2019. Since that time, the engine has attracted attention both nationwide and internationally. Youngstown Steel Heritage stands out among museums as one of the few U.S. nonprofits dedicated to the restoration and operation of historic steelmaking equipment, offering visitors an immersive experience of living history.
So your typical steam locomotive here, they could be as large as the big boy or as small as something like this. They all have basically the same components. And you have a boiler over a frame and running gear and drivers and cylinders up front. So on this particular one, it's called a tank engine, because up here is a water tank, so it carries the water above the boiler. And the coal is in the tender behind us. So inside the boiler, you have a series of 2-inch diameter steel pipes called boiler tubes. This one has 85 of them that go from about right here up to almost all the way up front. There is a firebox here, and there is a steel box, and then there's another box outside of it, and they're about this far apart, and there's water in between, and that water will conduct the heat away from that inner firebox and with the fire inside. So you have a coal fire going on the inside there, which is heating up all this water. When that water boils, it'll be about 300 degrees and under pressure. So this can run up to about 200 pounds of pressure. At the top is a throttle valve. So once you're ready to move, you open the throttle valve and let steam out to the cylinders up front. Steam comes out through this pipe down into this. This is the valve chest. So in here is a valve that moves back and forth, and as it moves back and forth, it lets the steam in on this side or this side. So when it lets it in on this side, it pushes the piston forward, then the valve moves, and then it puts the steam on this side, which pushes back. And then that reciprocating motion then thus becomes rotary motion back here on the main drivers. So then this turns and you can start moving down the track. Then you have another rod that connects, a side rod that connects both sets of drivers. Now by changing the orientation of the valves through this here reverse link, you're able to move either forward or backward. So normally you would be in the up position for going forward. On this one, you're in the up position for going forward and the down position for going backwards. So we have other features here. The water coming out of the saddle tank down through these lines would go back into the cab. There's something in there called an injector, which basically takes steam and then pushes it through a series of nozzles, which then sucks the water with it and then injects it through this line, through a check valve, and then into the boiler. And then we have one on either side. Now up front here in the smoke box is also very important, because where the gases are coming out, they intersect with the exhaust steam coming out of the cylinders. And the exhaust steam coming out of the cylinders comes up in the middle, and there is a nozzle. And so the steam will shoot up through the stack. Well, as it's doing that, it's creating a draft. So it's wanting to pull the products of combustion from the firebox through the tubes and out the stack. So the more the locomotive works, the hotter and more intense the fire is. So it's basically self-feeding. There are some other features on here. There's one line here that goes in there is a blower. So when you're sitting still, you can turn that blower on. It blows steam up through. That creates that artificial draft. So you can work the fire while you're sitting stationary. There's these particular items. These are called drifting valves. that open when you're drifting, when there's no steam in the cylinders, but the engine's moving. It's still displacing air in there, so this sucks air in into the cylinders. You have rigging here for the what they call cylinder cocks, and they're little valves at the bottom of the cylinder. So when these cylinders are rather cool, that steam will come in and condense into water. And if you don't have a way to get the water out, water being non-compressible, when that piston comes forward, it could blow the cylinder head off. So you have those cylinder cocks for getting that water out. Sitting here in the engineer's seat, so you have your throttle. That's what allows the steam to go out to the cylinders. You have something called a Johnson bar, which is forward and reverse. Well, that's actually forward and that's reverse. And you have various notches so that the further back you go, the longer of the stroke it's letting steam into the cylinder. So that's not very economical use of steam back there, but there's plenty of power. And the further you get towards the middle, the more economical you are operating. And over here is another handle. This is the brakes. So on this one here, it's just a straight air brake system. And it's off and on. There's the injector is over here. This is the steam line for the injector. This is the blower I was talking about, the creating the artificial draft. So this here will run the blower. This here line going up front, there's a whistle up on the front of this. And so this is the line that provides the steam out to that whistle. And there is another valve back there for the dynamo, and that's to make the electrical power. You have the pressure gauge. We're at about 135 pounds right now. Your water glass. This tells you the amount of water in the boiler. So we're about right here, which is pretty good for us, right where we're sitting. These three are if you want to check the steam water level without using a sight glass. It's a second way of doing it. If you look at, you can see you got steam coming out there, but you come down here and you can see water coming out. So by using those gauge cocks, depending on if you see water or steam, will give you an idea where the water level's at. Early locomotives didn't have sight glasses, they just used gauge cocks. And now with the sight glass, it's also just it's a secondary way in case something would happen with this. And then you have the very important oil cans, one for steam cylinder oil, one for engine oil. We call it PB&J, pin, bearing, and journals, not peanut butter and jelly. And then over here, this is a valve for the air compressor, which is in the tender. And all the way on the left is a blowdown. And we've got a pressure gauge over here for air brakes. And then in here is, well, it used to be a fire, but it's mostly out right now. And there's the firebox. So we'll get that going here again in a second, throw a little coal in there. But that's basically how it all works. We also got the locomotive bell there. This is the sanders. These are the selector switches for the headlights. And I got some other switches over there for additional lighting. So that's basically all you have in a very simple little tank engine.
Now that we've learned about these amazing machines, let's build back our fire and have some fun riding on the JNL narrow gauge railroad. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the trip. Although the JNL Narrow Gauge Railroad remains the museum's most popular exhibit, their collection features many other items, most notably a massive stationary steam engine called the Todd engine.
When I was just getting started in industrial preservation, I learned about the existence of that Todd engine over at Briar Hill at North Star Steel. And in '96, the mill donated it to us. Now, I graduated high school in '92 and never really been in an industrial setting before. This steel mill donates this 260-ton steam engine and told us that we could go in there and take it out, and I had no clue of how to do any of that stuff. So I got in touch with a few people who were stationary gas engine collectors, and they came out to help. And so we just basically over a 10-month period, went from one miracle to another. Somehow we managed to get that thing tore apart and out of the building. And all we had to do was take it to the other end of the plant, put it in another building in storage. So we did that. And then once we had it torn apart and in storage, then came the task of, well, now we got to find something to do with it. So I looked around, found some property, found this piece of property here, and bought it in 2000. And at the time I was working for CSX, so technically CSX bought the property through my wages. And then over the next 7 or 8 years, we slowly brought the parts over and started putting the engine together. Then in 2009, we built the building. I found a Morgan overhead crane, put in the building. Then did some restoration on the engine, and 2014 was its 100th anniversary, so we had it restored by then. And then at the end of 2014 is when I found this, and then interest completely shifted from the stationary steam engine to the locomotive. And really hadn't looked at it for the next 8 or 9 years. But now that the railroad is mostly done, the locomotive runs, we can go and fire this up, run it around anytime. Felt that let's get the Todd engine restored and done while I'm still, young enough and physical enough to actually get the work done. So we're spending the next 2 years to get the Todd engine finished. The eventual goal is to have it operational with an electric motor to rotate it, and also set up that we can run it on steam. And there's certain ideas that we have. One of the problems is that the high pressure cylinder on it's 34 inch in diameter, and these boilers are 39 inches, so boilers are a little bit on the small side. So we have some issues to deal with as to how we're going to generate steam to operate it, but that's the eventual goal. So our main program that we have going on is called a Steam Locomotive Experience, and it is just like an Engineer for an Hour program that several other museums have, but ours is a little bit different because we start in the morning with a cold locomotive, and whoever comes out to participate that day will build the fire in it, light the fire, spend 2 hours waiting for it to get steam pressure, all the while we're waking it up and doing all the lubrication and oiling, and then taking it out over the railroad, and they get an opportunity to run it up and down the track a few times. That's set up so that we can have anywhere from 1 to 4 people come out for the day, and we meet at a restaurant in the morning. We buy breakfast for everyone. We get to know each other a little bit, then come over here, get the locomotive going. We've been doing that for the last couple of years. It's been pretty popular. We've had quite a few people come out to take part in that. One of the things how we're a little bit different than some of the other programs is that we actually start from cold with the locomotive. So you get to see it from pulling it out of the engine house to putting it back in the engine house at the end of the day. So you get a full experience with the locomotive. In addition to that, we have a group of volunteers that comes out here on weekends and works on various different things. And of course we have memberships as well. What we try to do here is we like to have fun doing this sort of thing. It's all quite enjoyable. We work on a lot of different things, and we could be working on a steam locomotive, doing track, fabricating things, lifting, and our overhead crane work, so we could be taking parts on and off the engine. So we do just about anything and everything here that of an industrial nature.
To learn more about the Youngstown Steel Heritage Foundation, visit their website online at youngstownsteel.org. I hope everyone enjoyed this video as much as I did while making it. To help support the channel, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Railroad Street for more videos just like this. Until next time, I'll catch you on the rails.